Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today. Now, let's pass the mic to your MC, Letty Lundquist, to kick off this journey of enduring inspiration.
All right, so our topic is...
Well, it's sort of a combined topic of how to get into running and then how to get better at running, as well as how to be consistent, because consistency is how you get better at being a runner.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of people that have maybe never run before. So how would you guys, as putting on your coaching hat, approach them if they say, hey, I'm kind of interested, I've never done it, this is later in life for a lot of people. How do you approach running? What do you start? How do you not get injured and all that?
Well, I'll start off because I've actually written a few articles about this, and Boulder years ago had me write how to start from basically couch to 10K. And the first thing I always have people do is to do a lot of walking. I mean, you don't want to just shock the body by suddenly saying, okay, I'm going to go from being on the couch and not being very mobile to suddenly doing running workouts. You need to ease into it. And I've actually had to do this myself a few times coming back from surgeries where I didn't really start off immediately running. I would do a lot of walking. And as my body got stronger, I would shift. I'd start off doing like a 5-minute walk, 1-minute run. And then I'd, eventually get to where I was running 30 minutes. So the first thing everybody that wants to do is you also need to know for a fact that you're healthy enough to do this, because some people aren't. And, we shouldn't start off and say, okay, everybody should become a runner without having a doctor, basically. And you might have to get a couple doctors because not every doctor actually believes running is a good idea.
Well, it's a very interesting point. You mentioned the doctors. And of course, we do not have really very good levels of good health in America. Partly it's diet and partly it's the way you live, but I agree with you 100%, Benji. Walking is maybe the sanest sport of all. You're less likely to get any injuries. But I do think that we were professionals, so we were pushing human limits, to getting, so we got some injuries. I think we're human. That's a possibility of anyone. But I think the more you can learn about the sport, whether you read the magazines, you get some of the books that talk about that, is key. But I think maybe we started at such a moderate level when I began running, as we would just run 2 miles, maybe 4 days a week or something like that. I didn't run on weekends. I didn't even run on the summers when I was a college student. I took the summers off. So I think I had a very moderate introduction to running, and I've done pretty well injury-wise. So I think a moderate idea is you're absolutely right. I think on that, Benji, for the beginners. But I think most people think they can't do this, that, or the other thing, and I think if you were lucky enough to get a chance to be chosen for a quote team, that's how we choose our athletes in America, if you can be on a quote team, but the cross country has an open door policy for boys and girls. And unlike some of the other sports, and I think we should talk about that because half of all runners are women, so I think that's one of the strengths of this sport.
I think it's actually gotten where women are actually more apart. I mean, it's above 50%. It's back 50s, maybe even as high as 60%.
So maybe women are catching up and surpassing the numbers for a time being or something. But so I think, but most people, what I'm saying is a psychological thing. Do you think you can become a runner? Do you think you can beat whatever issues you're fighting, whether it is your weight or something? Rather than taking a drug, is it better to go out and do a walk with your neighbor? I think so. But I think it's this is the sport where the numbers are really booming, and I love seeing that. And maybe we're really lucky, Benji, Ron, and I, that we saw that back in the day. We have that experience. Letty, when did you start running, and why did you start running, I wonder?
So yeah, I started running. Well, I ran a little bit when I lived in Ecuador because they needed somebody on the relay team. I have no idea how fast or not fast I was. I was just one of the few people, but then I didn't run. And then I started smoking. And eventually when I was 22, I had a boyfriend who had done a marathon before, and he said, "Oh, let's go for a run." And I swear I thought I was going to die, because it was a 2-mile run. It was in Seattle. And by the time I finished, my face was red with white dots on it. And it was just such a it was a very extraordinary experience. So I can understand people that, that was at age 22, people that start in their 30s or 40s. I wonder, like, after years of not being active. Because for me, I've always had a somewhat active lifestyle, just not running. But I feel like, props to the people that run at all, and then after having children, they lose weight and have to running and then taking that leap. There's a lot of concerns as women, going to the gym because we feel shape and we don't want to wear run clothes. We don't want to wear shorts.
We've lost Letty.
Were you guys having trouble? I couldn't understand.
Yeah, she's getting back on, but I think her internet connection was bad there for a second.
Yeah, Letty, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
So yeah, like I was saying, people feeling like they don't want to wear the clothing that it takes to go running and actually be good at it. There's a lot of hesitation. So viewing it from that standpoint, I can fully understand how hard this is going into it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the problems becoming a runner is the preconception that you start with, and yes, getting past those preconceptions, recognizing that the first thing you need to be is just active. And it doesn't matter if you run 5-minute miles or 15-minute miles, just be active. And you go out and walk 20-minute miles. That's a pretty good walk for almost anybody. And you'll get your pulse up into a good aerobic range. And it may be that's all you ever do. Now we mentioned consistency at the beginning of this. That's the other thing. If you can get out 5 days a week, even 3 days a week, and do some aerobic exercise, there's all kinds of studies that show this is a huge health benefit, as well as psychological benefit. I'll get up some days and I feel like crap, just it's a crappy day. I don't want to do anything. And it's just, we've been in the 30s, between like 31 and 35, actually 30.5 and 35 for like 72 hours now. And it looks like crap out there. But if I go out and I start running, even start walking, I'll start feeling better, and I'll accept the fact that it's crappy weather. And the same thing. I mean, we're living in a time now where the news is always depressing. But you get out, you get away from the news, you get out and you start moving, you'll feel better. And these are things that, the consistency, doing it even when you don't really feel like it, you're going to feel like it after you started. You got to get first 10 minutes of movement, and then you'll feel like, okay, I like this now.
And then exactly, then that's the reason why you later on get out, because trust me, this morning at 5:00, I didn't feel like going running, but then I knew if I didn't, I know what it feels like to skip that workout and have to do it later on when you're busy and trying to squeeze it in, and how great you feel after you did it. So I think with that, it makes it for us very easy to do it, but to get to that point from not running to running, I think that is such a huge change of lifestyle, and it takes more than just you doing it because you live in a family setting. What if everyone in the family doesn't run, and all of a sudden there's you carving out this extra time just for yourself to go for a run? I think that's also something that maybe we can talk about a little, because you have to have your family on board. If you have young children and you have a non-supportive spouse, that can really ruin it for you.
Oh yeah. And we've all, the three of us, are not on our original marriages, partially because of our running.
It's very true. And I think it's such a powerful sport, maybe the most powerful sport in the world, I think, because, we are meant to move. that's what we feel. What you were talking about, Benji, when you go out, we know it raises levels of serotonin in our brains. It's just the key clicking. We're meant to move. But how I think the only way to change is for the corporate world to continue creating opportunities for their employees to have access to gyms, on the corporate site, or time off from work. I know of a case where someone close to me was working at a hospital, and her previous hospital, she had an hour lunchtime. She used it to go out for a run and then come back, make sure she had plenty of time. She changed jobs and went to another hospital, and they said, "Oh, you're not doing that here." You know what I'm talking about. I think there's a corporate role here. Do you value your health? What is it? Ben Franklin said, it's your first wealth. Smart guy. But I think we need to take a look at it from the leadership point of view.
I watched a program last night on Netflix called The Blue Zone, and it's about Centurions, where most of them are coming from. And it talks about diet, nutrition. It talks about walking. You might Google Singapore, and so what they have done is they have made walking a priority in their country. So to discourage people from driving and buying cars, the cars are extremely expensive and taxed very highly, and just to have a license is expensive to have. So it encourages, and all the businesses, they have gyms, as you're mentioning, Bill. They have gyms where you work out, and they have just a way of life, a standard of life where they're eating healthier restaurants that, it talks about what's in there, and they get incentives to put out healthier food, foods with less oil, less sugar. For example, soda is one of the things that our country is just notorious for, Pepsi, Cokes, and so on and so forth. It's restricted in Singapore, where they can only allow up to a maximum of 12% in their sodas, which there's no control in the United States over. But what was really interesting was the fact that, they do everything to encourage people to walk and exercise. And they've extended life expectancy there by years and years by doing so. So that's what we need to look at this country. Don't look at it as, as a negative to go out and walk and exercise. Look at it as a positive for life extension and better quality of life.
And so then for you guys as the coaches, once you get your future runners into these regular walks, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how they can progress from the regular walking into running, and then also talk about that fine line of how much is too much too soon in order to not get injured? And obviously we're talking about everybody being different, but just kind of as a guideline, how do you look at the future clients of yours, or, people that you're coaching?
Well, I start off with my, because I am coaching, and occasionally I'll get someone who hasn't had experience running before. So I start them off with a walking program. I also expect them to and encourage them to go and make sure that they are fit enough to exercise. But I start off with having the client begin with a walking program, just to make sure, and then they regulate everything. We monitor everything on a daily basis. So, and 10 to 15 minutes, and to begin with, as long as you're fit enough, and age comes into fact. How old is this person? How much does this person weigh? You have to factor all these in when coming up with a program.
And then I feel like, as you do it, you sort of weave running in with walking. and gradually,
Exactly.
You don't just start off, okay, you've been walking now, let's go and do a 2-mile run. No, let's do a 1 minute.
No. Yeah.
But then eventually, you're going to want to, be competitive perhaps. And that's where you have to start possibly looking for an online program or get a coach like Ron, and actually have somebody that can give you some specific guidelines and listen to how you're responding to the training and make adjustments. Because, the three of us trained differently, and it's because we learned what our particular needs were. And, there is no, this is the formula, you fill in these blanks and this is what you got to do. It doesn't work that way because every body is a little different than every other body. And that's why it's nice to have a guide.
I think
everyone's recipe is a little bit different.
Yeah. But in the end, I think getting help, we were all lucky.
Oh yeah. We actually, lucky. Given the time, we did very well given the time, because the base of knowledge was poor, and yet we all managed to run into people that could help us.
But what I was going to say, Benji, is we joined running clubs.
Yes, that helped too.
I quit running when I wasn't a member of a team anymore.
Yeah.
The loneliness of the long distance runner, that's just a movie, a story, a book, a message. But the real story is that this is loneliness. You meet so many people through the sport, and everyone's in a good mood. And that's what I loved about running. Even if you're in a serious race, and you competing with someone, in the end, we all shake hands.
Yeah, you were always a beast during the race, and really nice to be around as soon as the race was over. On the other hand, I'm somewhat of an introvert, and I probably have run at least 90% of my life by myself, but except for races, obviously.
But you ran for Racing South as a team, didn't you?
Well, Atlanta Track Club and then Racing South was the two groups that but I did Racing South. I saw those guys at races. I didn't see them. They were all over the Southeast. Atlanta Track Club.
With Lee Fiddler, didn't you?
Yeah, but Lee and I, we once or twice a week would get together for runs. The rest of the time it was ourselves.
That's all you need.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dick Berkeley earlier. Dick and I, before the 80 trials, him in the 5,000, me in the marathon, we did our speed work together and our long run together, and then the rest of the time we were on our own.
Atlanta really became a center of track and field, via the Peachtree Road Race, the Olympic Games and everything, and Jeff Galloway, and also Racing South. So there was a conglomeration.
Yeah, we had that. And you guys up in the Boston area had the Greater Boston Track Club and the BAA. And Ron, you went out and trained in Oregon, in Eugene, and
I'm like you, though. I probably did 90% of my training alone after college. Now in college, obviously that's a different story, but post-collegiately, I did most everything I did on my own, except now when I started training with Bill Dillinger in '83 towards the end of my career. I would do track workouts or speed workouts with guys that were training for the Olympics. But my Sunday run, typically, I might run with one other person or two other people, but a lot of those runs were solo by myself. I think
also the thing is with you guys running by yourselves a lot is you're a different caliber than the average runner that is in their mid-30s, mid-40s, mid-50s starting to run. They don't look for the same thing you do. We don't look for winning a race. We look for staying healthy, doing it for different reasons. So we
want that too, Letty.
Yeah, Letty
too. Yeah, we're not a different species, So I think we did want that. I think on the long runs, I wanted to be with my training partners, and a lot of times sometimes some runners were too slow, and it would break up, and there would be different functions and everything like that. Or doing hill repeats, I'd be with Greg Meyer and Tim Donovan or something. I never did hill repeats until Greg moved to Boston, and I could not stay with Greg. I could run with Tim, we were more even, but I think that it is a group thing. And I guess you got to find what you want, but I think mostly it is a team group sport,
Yeah.
but maybe Ron, where you
To a degree.
started, it wasn't until you went out to Oregon, which was a hotbed of running, and Atlanta Jeff Galloway had major influence there on the Peachtree Road Race, Benji. Don't you think that those were factors,
Yeah. Well, I'll give you, for example, I coach Letty, and when I first began working with Letty, she was pretty much training solo, just training by herself. And then I encouraged her to begin running. There was another runner that I tried to put her in contact with and she, well, I'm talking about Wes, Letty. And once you guys start training together, you start to seeing a big improvement in your performances as a result of training with someone who was faster than you. So she definitely benefited by having a training partner who was faster than she.
Yes, and Benji trained with Dick Berkeley, who was a 5K, 10K guy.
Yeah.
He had great range, but he was really fast. And
Yeah.
an Olympian and broke the world indoor mile record. So
Yeah.
Benji, you had to be pushing yourself, even though
the long runs, I would drag him. And I had to drag him from like 2 meters behind him because if I got up on his shoulder, he'd pick up the pace and it'd get to be too fast for both of us.
Yeah.
And then in the speed sessions, I would hang on for dear life. I mean,
Some runners are like that. They're so hyper competitive. My friend Tom Fleming, he always wanted to be 2 steps ahead,
Yeah.
I think
I remember that about Tom as well. Now, the other thing is not every city has this, but some cities, there are running groups that you can get in with. We have like a half dozen of them here in Boulder, as well as their group runs you can get into. I mean, like we have there are 2 areas right now that I can think of in Boulder where Wednesday evenings there's a group run. You just show up and you go for a run. And
you have a lot of pro runners like Steve Jones who are headquartered in Boulder. And also, the role of organizations like the YMCAs or WCAs, these are important, for beginners to go to and have always played a key role.
Or you go to your local running store and
yes,
they'll tell you where you can get a weekend run that you do, as well as you get fitter, you start showing up at road races and you just do them as a run initially, and you meet people and start building your group to run.
Network. Yeah.
I think the image of our sport, it used to be so negative. And for 40 years, whenever I did an interview with media, or 30 years or something, they don't talk to me too much these days, but they would say, "How are your knees?" And I said, "My knees are fine. I never had a knee injury in my life." There were so many myths about our sport. We know that your bones get stronger through running, your heart, you can build your heart capacity. We could reduce heart disease tremendously in America and around the world if we had more of this. These cardio, I call them the Olympic cardio sports, walking, running, swimming, cycling. So we are seeing that. And maybe through this little podcast, we can play a positive role.
So, Bill, what is your resting heart rate these days? And you're 70, what now?
I'll be 76 in 3 weeks or so, 2 weeks.
Okay.
Like that.
Early happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm at the peak of your career, what was your resting heart rate?
It wasn't too different from what it is now. I'm probably 37 or 40, something like that. My heart rate's low, but I am a high blood pressure person, and it might be part genetic. I don't know. I'll blame my parents.
How about you, Benji?
Well, during my prime years, I was in the high 30s, like 37, 38. I'm in the high 40s now, like 47. But part of that is because I have less lung capacity than I used to because I've lost a part of it. I've only got 4 lobes now instead of 5. And
Laddie, how about you?
So mine is right, like around 47.
You're a youngster.
Youngster, right? No, it's always around 47-ish, but I also have a lung problem. I have, the alpha I told you about. So It's, but it doesn't really get much slower than 47.
So these are obviously the benefits of all of us running
What
for
is
the
yours,
years. Mine yesterday morning was 39.
Yep.
So, and I'm 69.
And the average in America is what, 72?
72. Yeah.
For resting?
The average resting heart rate for Americans is 72. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. It's really high.
Let's look at the other end. What were your maxes? Do you guys know what your maxes were?
What was it?
The
highest heart rate you ever saw, and like on a treadmill, where somebody was doing, had the wires connected, etc.
Mine was is a 181. I haven't seen it higher than that, according to the watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Benji?
227.
That was your maximum.
Dave Martin had me hooked up to a treadmill.
Yeah.
We were at 12%, and I was running at 5-minute pace, and I ran at 5-minute pace for about 2 minutes at 12%. I got to 227, and it stayed there got there like in 30 seconds. It stayed there for the rest of the.
I mean, you were
not getting any higher, so you may as well. I raced at about 185 for the marathon.
Yeah. So I think our point is, what we're trying to say is everyone can lower your pulse, lower your blood pressure, keep your body weight or what's ideal for your body type, and be a happier person through this simple little sport. You don't have to be a marathoner. The marathon.
You don't even have to consider it a sport. It could just be an activity.
Yeah, just getting out and doing your walk.
That's what I love.
You don't even have to run. You can, just walk, jog. Now you're going to definitely benefit by doing that.
Yeah. And I think what happens is once you get involved in these kinds of sports, your diet does change. I was a big junk food king when I was trying to be a top marathoner or whatever.
Bill, everyone knew that you were a junk food.
Well, what about you guys? Come on.
I was too. I still am.
I'm not as bad as I used to be. I've cleaned up my act some, though I still have a soft spot for Pepsi and Mountain Dew. I don't drink as much of it as I used to, but I still have a soft spot for it.
I mean, I've been a vegetarian since age 12. I've never had a burger in the United States. I don't know. I've never been that into it. I do like salty foods, but I've never really been into, the processed and stuff that looks just too colorful.
Yeah. I gave up red meat back in 2003 when I found out I had prostate cancer and started researching the fact that a lot of the red meat in this country is.
And that's a serious point to make, Benji, because the number of deaths from prostate cancer for men equals the number of deaths from breast cancer for women. And I think there is an interesting connection. I don't know if eating red meat is a major factor for women in breast cancer. There's a number of factors. So we are talking about really serious issues. I met a doctor recently at the Philadelphia Marathon. I was at the expo and everything. And I had said in a comment that I think, smoking's still killing 200,000 Americans a year. It's the worst thing, hitting us, from into our society, our people. And this doctor came up to me and said, "No, Bill, you're wrong. It's changed. Now it's poor diet or something." So we got to be careful with our diet, guys and gals. But I think it's normal to have a sweet tooth and a salty thing to a degree. It's a matter of degree. It's like everything, I guess.
Moderation is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
We hope that you enjoyed what you heard. And if you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and share. And your support means everything. And until next time, embrace the journey and take care. Happy listening.